So just like we could check if something was na, we could also check if something was air. And we could do that with if air. And so you could pause the video and read the documentation, try to get a sense of what it's going to do, and then come back and unpause the video. So there's the documentation right there. Unpause the video, and then we'll work with it, and then we'll come back and read this documentation together. So I'm going to show you now how if air works. And if air is just checking if something is an error. And so here I am in 166 if air, and I've got the value 2. I'm adding it up to the value 42. You can see here C3 plus D3, right? I'm adding those two up. I'm going to change this to be C3 divided by D3, and I'll update this to reflect that. And now here, C3 divided by D3, I have 2 divided by 42, gives me a really small number. I'll put 42 there. 42 divided by 42 is 1. 42 divided by 2 is 21. But 42 divided by 0 is division by 0 error. Right? So I have an error there. So now I could do if error, and I could do it that way if I want. And I like it better doing it this way under formulas, logical, if error, because I get this nice dialog box which gives me some explanations. So doing that short way and then hitting tab this way, right? Doing it this way equals if error, and then hitting tab is great if you know what you're doing. And it even tells you like, okay, what value do you want to check and what value if error. And so I could click right there. I want to check this value, and if it's an error, I could say, whoa, we have an error. So I could have my own error message, or I might have it do something else logically. And so, whoa, we have an error. Whereas if this was 2, right, it's just going to show me that value. Kind of interesting because there it just automatically returned the value. So that is using if error, and I could also do it like this. Just go logical, if error, check this value, and if it's an error, whoop, whoop, whoop. Whoop, 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 and hit OK. And so when I divide by 0, whoop, whoop, whoops, there's my error. And I think I'll right align that, make it a little bit easier. All right, so that's using if error. Now let's take a look at the documentation together. Use the if error function to catch and handle errors in a formula. If error returns a value specified if a formula evaluates to an error, otherwise returns the result of the formula, right? So it will just give me whatever's in that cell we checked. I like the wording from up here better. If the value is not NA, if the value is NA, so we could put that same wording here. And we'll put if the value is not error, the value of the cell checked is returned. If the value is error, the value specified to be returned, value of error, the value of error specified to be returned is returned. So I just think that's easier wording. So if error takes a value, this is the syntax. How do we actually use it? There's the name of the function. Here are the arguments we pass into it, the value if error. And by the way, using these words, like what is the syntax of that function, right? This is the syntax right here. This is the syntax of the if error function. Here's the function name, and then here are the arguments we pass into it. We pass arguments into the area that's in the parens, and the value here, the value that we pass in, is going to be the cell to check, and this is the value we want returned if there is an error. Otherwise, it's just going to return whatever the value is in the cell that we checked, right? The argument that is checked for an error and the value to return if the formula evaluates an error. The following error types are evaluated. We saw it look for this one, but it also checks for na. So you could use if error or if na and kind of get the same thing. If value or value if error is an empty cell, if error treats it as an empty string value. So that's good to know, right? Like if this just right here was nothing, then it's just going to be nothing. It's empty string value, which it sees as 0 when that's a number. All right, so that is if error, and play with that a little bit. Create some formula, use if error, have it do one thing if you get the right if you get an error, and do another thing if you don't. And then come watch the next video. You're doing awesome. This is it. Just hang out, watch something, try it yourself, and then go on to the next video, watch that, try it yourself, and then you're becoming custom And customized, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, and familiar. You're becoming accustomed. You're becoming accustomed and familiar with Microsoft Excel and using it and just hanging out with it. So that's using IFERROR. That's using IFERROR.